Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. You know, most people don't take criticism very well. And one person who is especially guilty of that is yours truly. And I've identified in myself, and maybe you'll agree with me as it applies to you, that when someone criticizes you, your first instinct is to deny it. And then your second instinct is to defend it. And then the third instinct, which comes into play if you are asked to make changes, is you delay. Curiously, that's what most defense counsel do in almost every civil case that they wind up defending. One of the very first things they do is they have to file an answer. And in the answer, they take each numbered paragraph in the plaintiff's complaint or petition, and they respond to it by saying, defendant denies the allegations in paragraph 6. Defendant denies the allegations in paragraph 7. Now, a lot of the stuff they will admit. In paragraph 1, defendant admits that it's a Missouri corporation. Paragraph 2, defendant admits that Joe Blow works for Acme Corporation. Paragraph 3, defendant admits that it manufactures tail rocket 47103 used by plaintiff Roadrunner in this case. All of these things will come in if they're really not controverted. But once you start getting into allegations of negligence or anything like that, it's deny, 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 deny. And, you know, initially the reason that's done is because the defendant wants to see what you can prove. They want to see if you can bring information into the case that will establish each one of these things that you have pleaded. And of course, when you're a plaintiff, there are many things that you do not know. One of the things that you may not know is how the policy that was developed that implemented this action, how it came to be. You can't know that until you get discovery. So you allege a lot of things on information and belief. And in the federal courts, you have to explain what that information is and why that belief is reasonable. Because if you just plead the bare elements of a cause of action, many times federal courts will dismiss it, saying, this is just a formulaic claim, there's no real facts here, so we're dismissing it. Or they'll give you a chance to replead it. But either way, the bottom line is there's so much you don't know when you take a case on that you wind up discovering throughout the course of litigation. We often say that the standard approach to defense counsel's work is very much like the defense in a dog bite case. It wasn't our dog. It didn't bite you. If it did bite you, you deserve to get bit. And what are you hollering about? You weren't hurt anyway. That is sort of the mantra in almost every defense filed in every case that's filed by a plaintiff. Now, I established that background by way of setting up a story, a personal story, that I think plays into this and might give us some, perhaps some insight into a better way to handle criticism than to deny, delay, and defend. Recently, my wife contacted a physician's office and they turfed her to the nurse practitioner. Now, nurse practitioners are good people. Most of the time, they are 90% of a doctor, and they get stuff right a lot more often than they get stuff wrong. But they don't know everything. They don't have the full level of knowledge that a physician does. Even though their specialized technical knowledge in a particular field, for example, pediatrics, may be much greater than that of somebody who does routine surgical medicine on kidneys. So they may have better knowledge than some, but at the bottom line, they are still a nurse. She didn't really want to see this nurse, but she saw that person, and that person did not have an answer for her. And she said, well, I'm going to have to look at this up and I will have to get back to you. So my wife waited, I don't know, a week, week and a half. She never got back. So she called and left a message. Again, she waited and waited and waited, not getting back to her. So she called a third time, or a second time, I guess, and said, what's going on? I really need to know the answer to this. What is this? What should I be doing? And again, she heard nothing. So when she went in to speak to the physician who was responsible for supervising that nurse practitioner, she told him what had happened and explained that she didn't think that was right. That, if you promise to get back to somebody, you should get back to somebody. And basically the doctor said, well, we can't fix everything. That's not the issue. The issue isn't whether you can fix everything. And she didn't go and ask him to fix everything. She wanted to make him aware that she had a problem with a nurse practitioner not getting back to her. Now, that's a decidedly non-medical problem, right? There is no medical response to not getting enough information. That's something that could have been and should have been provided much earlier by the nurse. So all she wanted to do was bring it to this person's attention. And first he denied it, we can't fix everything. And then he defended it. Well, she probably had other things going on. I'm sure she didn't mean to blow you off. Well, I understand that, but twice, once shame on you, twice shame on me. I don't ever want to see your nurse practitioner again. If I call, I want to see you. And of course, that really ruffled the doctor's feathers, because one of the ways that physicians maximize their revenue and minimize their time obligations is to use nurse practitioners, because for 95% of the stuff, they can handle it. Hey, allow me to interrupt for just a second and ask you, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe. And if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button. That lets YouTube know that this is a good video and they can recommend it to others. It helps me out a lot. Thanks. But when somebody does not get back to you and that destroys your confidence in them, that's a giant red flag waving. Now, what would have been the proper way to deal with that criticism? The proper way to deal with that criticism would be to say, let's get her in here. Let's get her in here, and I want her to hear this. And then she would have an opportunity to defend herself and say, I'm really sorry. It slipped my mind. I meant to get back to you, but I couldn't. It didn't. I'm sorry. At any rate, it's my belief that if he had called her in there, she would have admitted that she didn't get back to her. That's not a good situation to be in for the nurse practitioner. But it's necessary for the doctor to know how people who he hires and who he is ultimately responsible for are dealing with his patients. Just a little postscript to the story. I called that particular office today, the physician's office today, to reschedule one of my appointments, and my appointment was with that particular nurse practitioner. And I was advised that that nurse practitioner was no longer with the practice and that I would have to be rescheduled for a different provider. Now, obviously what's happened here is some of that criticism rang true, and the doctor realized he had somebody whose oar wasn't in the water, or if it was paddling in the wrong direction. So sometimes, even when people delay, deny, and defend, they still get the message at some point and do the right thing. If you ran an automobile dealership and your service manager told people, I'll get back to you on what's wrong with your car, and then never got back to them on that, and they brought that complaint to you, you'd go find out from that service manager what was wrong with them. But sometimes people in medicine, particularly, just do not feel compelled to make that point. They don't feel compelled to take it to the next level, find out what the problem is, and adopt a policy or procedure to fix the problem. For example, having calls logged, having requests to the nurse practitioner logged, and require them to be closed out within 48 hours. And if they can't be, then have it be explained. There are many processes that can be used to improve basically customer service. And customer service is at the hallmark of all litigation avoidance. If you treat people well, if you do what you say you are going to do, in most cases you're going to avoid a bad outcome and you're going to avoid a lawsuit even if you do have a bad outcome. So when someone has a criticism of work that I've done, I think in the back of my head, I think of all the reasons they could be wrong. And that happens just like that, you know? And then I listen, and if it's a complex issue, I take notes, and then I say, you know what? I'm going to go back and take another look at this, and I will get back to you. And then I give them a date and time specific. Tomorrow by 9 or today by 3 o'clock. I will get back to you on this and let you know where this went off the rails. And then I do exactly what I have promised I am going to do. And in most cases, that solves the problem. And in most cases, their criticisms are valid. I mean, nobody would ever tell you that I am completely perfect. I am not. And I make mistakes just as many as anybody else would make. But when I make a mistake, I try and learn from it. And as my good friend Dr. Joe Main used to say, don't be sorry, just do better next time. So that's what I try to do. I try to do better next time. If we all let our defenses down just a little bit, process the information that we're getting, and then reached back out and either offered an explanation or an admission that we dropped the ball, in most cases, upset customers, upset patients can be dealt with in a way that mitigates any harm that might have been done. I offer that for the people out there who are in customer service positions, whether they're in medicine or whether they're doing something else. The bottom line is you have to treat people the way you would want to be treated. And if you get put off and you don't get someone who is doing what they should be doing, then in most cases you're not going to stay with that provider or that entity. I know myself, I have moved away from a number of providers of different services, either because they have taken an action which I believe is inconsistent with their values, or because they have taken actions directly hostile to people like me. So what's the best thing to do when someone starts criticizing you? Well, the first thing to do is to listen actively. And that means what I hear you saying is you don't like the way I made the sandwich, or you don't like the way I talked to you, or whatever it is that you think their central complaint is. Because a lot of times when people get angry, they become unfocused. And they may tell you, no, it has nothing to do with what you said. It has to do with something else, which is their real problem. And of course, if you address how you spoke to them, all that's going to do is just add fuel to the fire. So you have to know what their key problem is. What do they think you did wrong? And a lot of times, as you are probably aware, many times people think you have done them wrong. You have actually done them a solid because you have acted in the way that you are supposed to act. So in that situation, you wait until they let all of their steam out, and then you start back with, well, I want you to understand why I did what I did. And it's because I have rules that I have to follow. And those rules are not written by me, they're written by someone else, and I have to adhere to them. And here are those rules. Here, I'll show you a copy. And this rule right here that I'm pointing to, that's the one that said I had to do this thing that you didn't like. And I'm really sorry you didn't like it. And I guess maybe we should have talked about it before I did it and let you know that that was going to happen. But frankly, I didn't see where you might be upset about it. I'm sorry that you are. So listen, address the problem. If somebody needs more information or if you need more time to look at it, if it involves, for example, one of your employees, you say, okay, I really appreciate you bringing this to me. I'm sorry that you're unhappy, but let me talk to my employee. Let me see what their view of this is. We might need to bring them in. I might need to sit you two down and see where we're at, and then we can deal with this. But I promise you, we're going to deal with this. I'm going to take your criticism seriously, and I'm going to address it. If you do that, about 90% of the time, you'll solve the problem right there. A lot of times people will say, no, I don't want you to bring Kathy in here. I really don't want her to know that I complained about her. I just wanted you to know that I complained about her. Which of course makes no sense, but people do things like that all the time. They don't always make sense, and expecting people to make sense is a little bit like expecting the bull not to charge because you're not wearing a red shirt like I am. So I offer that for what it's worth. If you have any suggestions or comments about dealing with criticism, particularly some of you folks out there who are really bright and really good and great communicators, I would love to hear from you. And again, you can use the email up there, or if you like, you can comment here on the video. Either way, like, share, subscribe, all those things, you know what we like for you to do. Thank you so much for watching. If you have the opportunity today, please do something kind for someone else. And then catch me down here at the beach again next time. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.